I say, oh, this is Kyle again with Korean Adoptee Stories. I'm excited because I'm here with Adam Goodman, who's basically the podcast extraordinaire for GiDE. I really enjoy doing these kind of interviews. It allows me to get to know some of the members and other CADs around the community. So I thought this would be a good time to discuss further about other issues going on. There were some people that were complaining that our videos were slightly negative, but according to Adam, he has a fairly, I would say, more of a positive outlook, and we want to make sure that we're getting all kind of perspectives, not just the bad. We also want the good as well. So, so stay tuned. Again, we have Adam Goodman. He does the podcast for GiDE, and we'll get started. Hey, Adam, thanks for joining us today.
All right, thanks for having me, guys.
So what is your role actually in GiDE? Could you explain a little bit? I know that you're the podcast, but are you like the social media lead team as well, or?
I'm not the social media lead.
Okay.
That's Jennifer works, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
She leads the team really well. But I guess I'm the main, I'm the podcast person.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say in social media, I do Twitter.
Okay.
Mainly, so I help with the Twitter side. So the podcast and Twitter.
So you seem pretty knowledgeable about kind of the audio technicalities, and you looks like you even have your own condenser mic. Do you like do music or something, or?
I bought this when we were going to do the podcast.
Oh, really? Okay.
With Plan A magazine, so not just GiDE, but I bought it a few years ago, and it served me well.
So I believe this is like your 6th podcast coming up, if I'm correct.
Yeah, it's podcast number 6 for GiDE.
How are you guys doing with the podcast? Are you able to come up with material every week, or?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's never a shortage of things to talk about and guests, and Derek, Jody, and Moses have done a good job, sort of just in their own part of the podcast, coming up with people to talk to and topics, and it's gone really well. I think it's been, and the momentum's building, and we'll just keep going.
I kind of like doing these Korean Adoptee Stories because I don't know you personally, but I kind of like to get to know you on kind of the camera because it just makes it more fun.
Of course, yeah.
So I like to not delve too deep until we actually get to it, so I'm kind of excited. So you said you had a pretty positive Korean Adoptee experience. So have you end up finding your parents, or do you know, could you explain a little bit about your story?
Yeah, I have no problem doing that. So as you said, Kyle, that I would say that of sort of the adoptee scenarios and stories and circumstances, mine would be sort of described as an ideal one, or as good as it can get. I was, even though I was an older adoptee, I was adopted when I was 3.5 years old. I was adopted with my younger brother as well. So my adoptive parents adopted both of us at the same time, and we grew up in a upper middle class family, nice neighborhoods, good schools, two parent households, with my brother. So I wasn't in a scenario where I was an only child, or the only adopted child with some biological children. So so from the face of it, it seems it's as positive as it could be, right? It's as perfect a scenario as you could sort of draw up on paper. But I've struggled with a lot of the same sort of questions of identity and acceptance and survival and abandonment and issues and things like that any other, I think, adoptee sort of struggles with.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the picture with some the people that were kind of complaining were actually the white parents. So
yeah.
Deep down, I think even no matter how good you have it, there's still everyone that kind of struggles, maybe has some negative thing that they have to work out, but it's more about the fact that they're learning to, or have maybe overcame it, and that's kind of what the focus, I feel like, has been for our videos. and your guys' material as well with the podcast, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, we want to acknowledge that there are struggles, and a lot of those struggles are what bind us together as adoptees, right? We can sort of recognize part of those things in each of ourselves, but that with these adoptee stories and with the podcast for GiDE, and just as I think the GiDE mission as a whole, we can get through them and we can work through them and we can support each other and sort of, and end up thriving and doing really well. So that even no matter how negative are, I take from it that, we're doing really well, on the other side of that. We survived and we're, continuing to do well. So
I remember you had a podcast. I think the last one I was listening to was how long you actually have been involved in the Korean adopted community. How long have you been involved around the CADs?
Okay, so I'll say that I really entered it in around 2007.
Okay,
because that's when I went to the big gathering that we have in Seoul. One of the IKAA gatherings in Seoul. So I've been involved since 2007.
Where do you actually live?
I live in New Jersey right now.
New Jersey, okay.
I live in Fort Lee, New Jersey. Yeah.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Westchester, New York.
Was it generally predominantly white there then as well, or did you have a lot of?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
it's I don't know. It's 80-90% white, something like that.
So you kind of had a deal with kind of being kind of the only Korean adoptee as well as some CADs, I feel like, experienced on.
Yeah. I mean, it was a little different because I did have my brother with me, right? So I wasn't the only sort of CAD, but we were the only two CADs, right? It wasn't like a ton of other CADs with us. We were about we were two of the 5 Asian people in our whole school, right? So, and maybe 1 or 2 other black people, and maybe not even a lot of Hispanic students. So yeah, it was very, very white, even though it's New York.
Were you guys pretty well adjusted socially? Got along with a lot of your classmates, or were you quiet, or maybe you could explain a little bit?
Yeah, I'd say I was. We had friends. We were part of the community.
Okay.
I would say we were fairly well adjusted. I mean, I was an athlete. I was in the theater. I was a good student. So yeah, I was, a lot of us were all American. Mm-hmm. We do everything just like everyone else.
So I was wondering, did you ever experience bullying or racism? Because there's quite a few CADs that I feel like actually, unfortunately, did. My brother and I kind of did a little bit, and a lot of the other stories I've been talking to kind of experienced that. So I was wondering if you experienced that at all.
I remember it when I was younger, but I was fortunate to not have to deal with it in my immediate, the very obvious racism. I don't remember having to deal with it. Ironically, the only time I really got any of that was when I was playing sports. There was a tournament we had, soccer tournament. I was 13 or 14, and we played a team from the city, from New York City, and I got it then. And it was the most diverse team that we had played, and I got it from those kids, but I had never really gotten it from, the white kids I was playing.
So it sounds like wherever area you grew up in, Mighty was actually pretty, actually probably decent human beings, it sounds like.
Fairly. I mean, I did have some of it. There were some kids who would try to pick on me. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, I was able to deal with it, and maybe just because I was, I was in a certain social circle, maybe I wasn't targeted.
What kind of sports did you play aside from soccer? Did you play other sports?
I wasn't. I think in suburban New York. You play everything up to a certain point, but then soccer was my main sport. So I played baseball, basketball. Soccer was my main.
Were you pretty good?
I'm in like my late 30s, so I don't want to sound like one of those guys that's like back in high school. But you know what I mean? But I was a pretty good player. But I wasn't like world class, but I was good enough to be in travel leagues, and so it wasn't just like a casual thing. Like, I played probably 9 months out of the year for a while.
How old are you actually? I guess you don't have to disclose like the specifics. You said you're in your late 30s.
I'll be 39.
Okay. For some reason, I thought you were born in 1990. I guess whatever I researched was wrong. Yeah, you look young.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it.
How old is your brother then? How much younger is he from you?
He's like 3 years younger.
Okay.
He's 35.
Would you say he was well adjusted as well too?
Yeah, I mean, we're like best friends, and it did help a lot. I think having him with me, and I don't want to sound like my family life was like perfect. We had our problems. Nope. We had our problems like anyone else.
Do you generally have a good relationship with your adoptive family? Then you'd say your parents.
Yeah, I do. My dad passed away, a few years ago, and my mom's still around. But yeah, we had a good relationship. It was tough for a while, but it recovered and got better.
Did your family move with you to New Jersey, or did they stay in New York where you guys?
No, my mom is not going to move to Jersey.
Oh, okay.
She's still in Westchester. That's where she is.
Okay.
That's where she's going to live, until the day she dies, I think.
Do you visit her often, like during the holidays then, or?
Yeah, I'm the son who's close, and my brother moved, he's not close, but we try to spend as much time together as we can. At least one of the big 2 holidays, so at least Thanksgiving or Christmas. Usually not both. But yeah, we try. But it's been hard with the whole COVID.
Yeah.
I think that's the toughest thing, is not being able to see my family.
You ever thought about having your brother part of your podcast at all, since he does have a cat perspective, or?
It's funny, like, he actually started his own podcast recently.
Oh, really? Okay. So you guys are competing or something?
No, it's kind of funny, but no, he's great. Okay. It's totally has nothing to do with like, being adopted or anything like that. Like he's tackling, some more, broad, political, social, issues. But yeah, we've talked about it, and I'm sure it'll happen at some point. So
cool. So I guess I wanted to delve in more about your adoption story. Do you know your Korean name, and do you know where you're from?
Yeah. So my Korean name is Lee Sung-il, and just last year, my wife and I went back to Korea. My wife is Korean American.
Okay.
And we went back to Korea on vacation, and with the express purpose of going to where I was adopted from, where I was born. And so we went down there, and we went to the Name, which is like a small island off the coast of southern Korea, off the southern coast, and it's near Busan. It's like I think it's like an hour or 2 hour bus ride from Busan. And so we went there, and we went to the government office, and dealing with the Korean government is much easier than dealing with the American government.
Seriously? Really? I never knew that.
Oh, much easier. I mean, it was obviously made easier because my wife is pretty much fluent in Korean.
Oh yeah, okay.
I was able to communicate with them. But even I feel like even if I had gone and sort of had a letter, or they all, everyone there sort of spoke some English. So I think I would have been able to fumble through. And they were so eager to help. And maybe it was just because I was an adoptee. And I think Koreans of all ages sort of are aware that this has happened and like adoptees exist, right? And so they were very eager to help, and they helped us out. And I got documentation of like my birth and like everything, and it was a very, I don't want to say good experience, but it was it was an important one. It was a meaningful experience.
So with the documents, were they actually accurate then, or presumably?
Yeah. They went on the computer and they just typed it up and they searched and they were like official. We got we paid $2 and we got like an official printed out document with like my birth mom and my birth dad's name and my name and sort of like I'm like I officially existed in Korea.
Have you met your birth folks then, or?
I have not. No.
Is there a reason?
It's just something I haven't done.
Oh, okay.
I haven't seriously searched. When I was in high school, there were some letters that I wrote back and forth with my birth mother.
Oh, really? Okay.
Since then, there's been no communication. And I feel guilty about that. I feel like I should have done more. I should do more. So I carry some guilt.
So you actually were talking back and forth with your mom then, right? You're saying?
Yeah, and I still
great.
have the letters. Yeah. Yeah. But and I have a half brother and half sister.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, but they don't know. It's very bittersweet because I don't think they know I exist.
Is that because of the mom's?
My mother didn't.
Oh, mom didn't want.
Yeah, my mom didn't.
So there might be some family dynamics that actually, if you maybe pursue it, maybe
yeah, exactly.
the mom might be a little hesitant with because she hasn't told her own other siblings, huh?
Yeah. That's something that factors into like, do I want to ask? Do I want to search? Do I want to do something that could hurt her in some way? But I do want to know. I do want to know her. I want to know my half siblings. It's complicated,
Being slightly older, do you feel like you're still missing a piece of yourself? Do you want to actually? I mean, before she does get older, do you actually think you would ever push yourself just to try to like maybe meet her in person, or you're kind of hesitant about it?
No, her age and the fact that you never know what could happen does weigh on my mind, and it's something I think that would push me to do it. Part of me wants to do it with my brother, right?
Yeah.
But I think at some point, I would do it. I'm going to do it regardless because I just don't want to. I was lucky enough to be able to be there with my father my adoptive father when he passed away, and I was able to tell him everything I wanted to tell him. But so I wouldn't want to regret. At least I wouldn't want to regret not searching. Right? Like that's sort of like the least I could do. I'm not going to put pressure on myself to be like find her and sort of do that, but I can at least try.
This seems like a dumb question, but you already talked back to her. She's not in the same location. Whoever you got your letters translated, or do you have the address that she's living at now from where she sent the letters, or how was that process? Was that from the?
No, none of that. I don't know where she's. So it was through this. It was through the adoption agency. So I don't. They don't divulge information.
What adoption agency were you from? Was it ESW? Yeah.
No, it was through Spence Chapin.
Oh, okay. Actually, I never heard of that one.
Yeah, they're much smaller.
So one question I have is, I guess I'm just a little bit curious. My name's Travis. I don't know if Kyle told you about me. We're actually twins. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, how you doing? So the question I have is there a reason why your mom and dad put you up for adoption, or are you not able to disclose that?
I don't think any of us really knows for sure. The story I was told, or the story I was told is that they weren't married at the time. So, they had me, and then they sort of raised me for a bit, and then they had my brother, and they raised him for a bit, and then I guess the story I was told was that my birth dad, he lost his job. So it was sort of and then because they weren't married or something like that, they didn't want to have to deal with it and get help from families, I guess, because of the shame of that. So they put us in an orphanage in foster care.
You were so young. Do you remember any images of that age, or?
I do.
Oh, really? Okay.
I dream about it sometimes. I have some, I think, like images and sort of smells and.
One interesting thing when I was listening to your podcast, Jody was saying that she hid food, which I thought was strange. I never heard that before. So did you do that too, or?
I hadn't either. But
that was the first time I heard that, so it's kind of interesting.
I hadn't heard of anyone else doing it.
Okay.
I don't think I did that.
Okay.
But I can imagine if you were an older adoptee and maybe like a child, young child, and you were poor, that you would do that. I mean, I think it's something that people do. I just haven't heard it from another adoptee. But that affected me. I was like, I had to think about sort of why anyone would why would a child be driven to do that, and it's tough thinking. It's tough thinking about those things.
So, do you actually remember what your mom looks like based off some of those dreams, or is it kind of a blur?
Well, I have a picture of her, but that was from when I was in high school.
Okay.
So that was like 20 plus years ago. But I don't remember sort of what she looked like when she was younger, like when I was a child. I do have a picture of her.
So another question I have is related to that. Like, you said that you mentioned that you got involved in your Korean Adoptee search in 2007. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Were you involved in any Korean activities like camps or language before that, like in elementary or middle school, or were you the adoptee that was more like, I'm geared towards nothing related to my culture?
I think when I was like a young child, maybe 7, 8 years old, my parents took us to one of those like Korean culture camps. But I think it was only once or twice, and then we never really did it again. And then, where I grew up in Westchester, there were a lot of Chinese immigrants, so they had like Chinese language schools, but there weren't enough Korean immigrants. And then I didn't really I didn't explore or really think about Korean culture until college.
What kind of made you actually, hey, I'm Korean adoptee, what kind of made you want to, I guess, look into your heritage and culture? Was there a click, or?
As I got older, it just was something I couldn't ignore. As I got to I was applying for college and things like that. Like you're sort of asked to think about who you are, because applying to college in America is like selling yourself as and your potential, and your identity to other to prospective colleges. And I got to start thinking about that, and then I had to realize that, look, I'm not white. No matter how much I felt white, and maybe my mental image of myself was like this white guy, when I look in the mirror, I'm not a white guy, right? And I always knew I was adopted. It wasn't like something I was hidden and just learned. So that sort of got me thinking about it. And then when I got to college, the first people, because when you put down all this information, I put down that I was Asian, that I was Korean.
Yep.
And because I think for some weird reason it's on the housing form. Anyway, so that goes to the college, and then the first people who greeted me when I got to campus, the first people to knock on my dorm room door were was like the Korean American Society, and like
really?
big brother, big sister. So there was like a big Asian American community there. And they were the first people to be like, welcome to campus, like, I'm your big brother, I'm your big sister, and like we're gonna invite you to parties and events and like include you in college life.
That kind of must have been like kind of maybe it felt good, kind of being welcomed by where you're from.
Yeah, it was. I wasn't expecting it. It was like completely surprised. It was a complete surprise, and I don't think I ended up like becoming really good friends with that community.
Okay.
But like I always felt welcomed, and at different points I sort of stepped in and out. But yeah, it was very positive. I was like, oh man, like I am Asian, right? Like they didn't they didn't like look at my name and be like, oh, this guy can't be Asian. They were just like, oh, he said he was Korean. We're gonna check him out, and lo and behold, I answered the door. I looked Asian. They didn't have to be like, oh, it was just some Jewish guy that was playing around, you know. And yeah, so it was very positive.
So a little bit about your agency. You said, or finding your mother during that time, like probably 2007. You said you actually had to go to Korea to actually find information, or did you guys get enough information like online, like with like how my brother actually did with Children's Home Society? We just mainly emailed them. Actually, we didn't have to visit the place yet.
My mom had some original documents, so she had like some of the adoption documents and stuff like that, and that had some of the information like where they said I was born.
Okay.
Right.
So then from that, my wife and I were able to be like, oh yeah, well we're just gonna go there when we go to Korea. So that's where that sort of started.
So your adoptive family, did they pretty much tell you that you're adopted? Did they have that kind of little story? With us, we kind of had that like storybook when we were younger. They actually were pretty open, actually really open about being adopted.
Yeah, it was never hidden.
Okay, that's great.
You know, we were adopted, but you know, they loved all the things we all get told. I don't remember if we had like a book. You know, like I think some adoptees like they'll have like a book, or whatever, like our story or whatever. I don't know if we ever had anything like that. We certainly had like family picture albums, and there are a lot of books like people have where like they build their family story, things like that. But I don't think it probably had parts of it that were about like adoption or like how we came not from mommy's belly, but from whatever. But yeah, it was never hidden.
Okay.
We always knew. It wasn't like you can't really hide it when when your parents are white or Asian. You know what I mean?
So did you have any adoptive biological siblings at all, or did they just have you and your brother, your adoptive family?
Just me and my brother. We were my parents couldn't have children. So,
okay.
Yeah, we were it.
So this is a little off topic. You said that your wife is Korean American. Is that correct?
Yeah.
She speaks Korean. Do you ever practice Korean with her, or you're not really interested?
She tries to get me to learn, and she tries to teach me words. But I don't know. I get embarrassed because I'll try to pronounce them, and then, and this is me protecting my own ego, so this is not on her at all. She tries to get me to do it, but then, I get embarrassed and sort of annoyed at myself. So she tries to teach me.
Do you actually know a bit of Korean then?
A little bit. Like, I'm like not even like a child. I'm like baby level.
How'd you meet your wife?
We met online.
Was it a dating site or?
Yeah, we met on Coffee Meets Bagel.
Never heard of that one.
I think it's like mainly in New York and like LA.
Oh, I see.
But it was started by 3 Korean sisters.
Oh.
It's mainly Asian American actually.
Oh, I see.
But not on purpose, I don't think. But like it's very much like.
So do you have kids at all then, or?
No kids, not yet. We're hoping, but no kids, not yet.
How long have you been married?
It was our 2nd wedding anniversary Tuesday.
Oh, that's cool. Congratulations. So I guess, why did you decide to move to New Jersey? Is it different from New York, or culturally, is it more prevalently diverse, or where you
Yeah, so it was partly because I got a new job. So like I had started working at a company that was based in New Jersey, and I was still living up in Inwood area. So I was driving a long way, like an hour or more.
Holy cow!
Back and forth. So it was like 2 hours of commute. And and my wife still works in the city, in Manhattan. So we had to find a place so that was kind of halfway, right? So Jersey seemed like a good place because we also didn't want to continue renting in New York. Like it's just really expensive, and where we would have had to go was expensive. So we were looking for places in New Jersey to go, and Fort Lee is a very diverse. It's like 25% Korean, and like maybe 10 or 15% Japanese, and like Greek and Italian is like the other part of it, I think. And so but the downtown area, it's like a little Koreatown. I swear, like you would think Fort Lee was a town of like 95% Koreans, from downtown. So, yeah, so, and that was a big factor, that it was going to be sort of a diverse enclave, and we could get all the food we want, and the restaurants were good, Korean food was good, and it was a good place for us in terms of my community and her community. So,
do you have a favorite Korean dish? Do you like K-pop, like Korean dramas?
That's the typical
people ask when you're Korean.
I love Korean food. I would say samgyeopsal is my favorite.
What's that?
Pork belly.
Oh,
pork belly.
Pork belly.
I don't think I've ever had that.
Oh, no?
No, neither of us had.
It's basically big, thick bacon.
Oh, really? Oh. I don't
think
we
we would like that.
No?
I'm not really of a fat eater unless it's like crisp to the core.
Oh, dude, you'll have to try it.
Really?
I mean, you can get some more thinly cut, but it's like, it's just really good.
So it's not similar to bulgogi then, huh?
Bulgogi's fine. I don't love like with my meats. I like them to be more savory than sweet.
Okay.
And bulgogi is like a sweet marinade or sweeter marinade. I like the kalbi is better, that's a better, like, more less sweet marinade.
Is kalbi squid, or am I different? Octopus?
No, kalbi is the beef short rib.
Oh. Okay.
Bulgogi is like the it's more like a stir fry, not stir fry, but like it's a thinner cut.
Okay.
So, yeah. And I love Korean food. That's the thing. So, my wife is a good cook, and like she just cooks Korean food, and I'm happy with that.
What did you actually end up majoring in school?
So what did I entered college as a biochemistry major.
Okay.
But I ended up, I talk about my college odyssey, but I ended up transferring from where I entered school, and then I finished school with a computer information science degree and a major and a business minor. So
are you doing something with computers now as a job?
Yeah, I'm a business analyst.
Okay.
So I'm not like a programmer. I don't like code for everything, but I work with technology. So it's sort of like a hybrid project manager and like analyst.
Did you do pretty well in school?
I did better in high school than I did in college. Like the first half of my college career was rocky.
A lot of drinking and partying, or no?
A lot of drinking, a lot of partying, but also like I was very depressed in college. So I went through a period of severe depression.
Do you think that related to your adoption at all, or was that probably I don't know if a relationship or?
I would say that now, but I've always lived with with depression.
Okay.
And I've managed it sometimes better, sometimes worse. And I think part of that comes from the adoptee issues, right? And stems from the adoption. I don't, I wouldn't say that my acute episode in college was specifically about my adoption.
Okay.
But the fact, that all those issues were always sort of underlying my anxieties. So it certainly didn't help.
You mentioned something like that. I have a mental illness too, but I've been bipolar since 2008, so maybe 12 years now. Did you struggle with depression where it caused like suicidal ideations, or do you have to take meds or therapy or any of that stuff that's provided for you?
Yeah. I never got to the point where I never really got to the point of suicidal ideation.
Okay.
But I certainly was bad enough that I was on medication for, I don't know, probably 10 years or so. But I've been, I haven't taken medication in a long time, probably for about that long.
Was there a reason why you stopped? Because you felt better in general, or?
I felt better, and then I think there was a general push from my family to be like, you shouldn't be on these for your whole life. Which I guess in a way is not a good thing. But I ended up, I was able to deal with not being on medication.
Were you uncomfortable speaking to your family about your depression, like your adoptive family? Did you keep it to yourself, or were you open?
Of course, yeah. It was not something I really wanted to admit. No one wants to admit that, but I think my family was pretty good with sort of, at least my mom, I think more than my dad, accepting that this was something that I had to sort of do. So, and you mentioned, Travis, therapy. So I had been in therapy before as well.
Was the access to that pretty, like, was it there? Were you able to get as much access as you could to mental health services?
I was.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, when I was with my parents and it was like sort of on their insurance, it was very easy. In college, it's harder, not because it's not available, but because you're sort of responsible to do it on your own. Right? Like when you're at home living with your parents, they'll get you up, drive you, or at least my parents, they sort of like get you there. In college, even though I probably should have done it a lot more than I did, because I was, you're living and you're on your own and you're sort of an adult or being asked to be an adult, I just didn't do it, right? Like I was so badly in my depression that there were months and months where I would barely leave my dorm room. Like I wouldn't go out. And the only place I'd come out to do would go to my fraternity house and drink and party. So like I wouldn't be going to class. I'd be just on the computer or watching movies or just sleeping. I'd sleep for days on end. Just really bad, like really badly depressed.
Did you have to get help, or did someone notice it and they asked?
Yeah,
you,
what kind of changed your perspective on yourself, saying, "Hey, maybe I got a problem"? What kind of clicked, I guess?
I think my girlfriend at the time, and I think my parents, and then it was just sort of like it had come to a point where I was just like, all right, I got done with the semester, and I went home, and my parents were like, "You're just not going to go back, and we're going to try to see if you can just get better." And I think eventually, though, I went back too soon, and then I had to come back, and then it was a big ordeal. But it was a combination of just like my parents at some point just being like, we're just gonna pull you out.
So I'm guessing you're a really big believer in GiDE's mental health.
I am. Yeah, you could say that. I just I was lucky enough that. I mean, I don't know if it's luck or not, but I didn't attempt suicide. I didn't think about it, but I was in a bad way. And I just think that mental health in general is very important for people to take seriously. And for our fellow adoptees who make that ultimate fatal choice. I want to avoid that as much as possible.
I know when I first came out, I didn't want to believe I had an illness. Did you feel the same way, or you didn't want to believe it, or were you willing to try to get help right away, or had that stage of disbelief?
Yeah, I fought it. You don't want to think that like you're. I didn't want to think that there was something wrong with me. I don't. It's probably not just me, but for me, I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to be like someone that that was hurting my friends and family. So it was tough for me to realize it, but it was just you couldn't ignore it. Like it was happening. You couldn't hide it. It was obvious.
One thing I guess I kind of wanted to delve a little bit deeper in the psyche of things. Do you think your adoption affected your relationships with other people, or were you pretty adjusted? Did you have like any abandonment issues that you had to deal with that I feel like a lot of adoptees did, or trust issues, or generally you were pretty...
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you do to kind of go through it?
Well, I think most of my abandonment issues and manifested or affected my relationships, like dating.
Yep.
So it wasn't really friendships, I don't think, though it does affect some of my friendships, I feel. But it was mainly around like romantic partners and things like that. I think for me, it manifested as like just being, sort of like that doormat, right? Like letting people walk all over me because I was afraid that if I like stood up for myself, they would abandon me, right? They'd be like, "Oh, you're too difficult now to deal with. You're just I'm gonna go away." And for my marriage now, I was married before, and there was abuse in that relationship, against me.
This is the first time speaking to a Korean adoptee that's male that actually was abused by a female. You're saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I was physically abused.
That's horrible.
I'm sorry to hear that you've gone through that, but I'm just curious. Were you with your relationship on a similar note? Was marrying a Korean person ideal for you, or it just sort of happened and things clicked? Or
I always just felt a comfort with Asian people,
Mhm.
Asian women in particular.
So you never dated outside your race?
I did.
Okay.
But I did heavily prefer, other Asian people to date. It just always felt more comfortable to me. Obviously, I didn't screen anyone out on purpose, but I always just knew that I would end up with another Asian person.
So speaking from a male perspective, I'm not going to give out the name. He kind of has a belief that I know I might get flack about this too, because do you feel like it's difficult being Asian male?
dating
I guess dating or finding a girlfriend or finding a relationship. Have you had any experience with that, or were you pretty successful in how you dealt with a woman?
Yeah, I think there are just realities of sort of how race interplays in America, right?
Mhm.
And sort of the white supremacist systems that we live in society. And there was a period in my life where, that really affected my psyche, right? Like how I sort of, went about dating and how that affected me, and sort of like a big chip on my shoulder about it. And so, and I'll admit I didn't always treat women, as nicely as as with as much respect as I should have. But it's something that I feel like, as individual Korean men who are, dating around, of dating age, that we have to work very hard to not affect us in that way. Like, we're not going to be able to, as individuals, change racism in America, right? And so we need to, and the way I see it is that if someone is going to reject you, or dismiss you offhand because of your race, then that's not someone you want to be dating anyway.
Exactly.
And that's just use it as a filter. And rejection is hard. I'm not saying rejection is easy, and especially for adoptees with our abandonment issues and being people pleasers and all that, it certainly hits differently. But rejection to me is a filter for someone. If they're going to reject you, then just forget them. And it's hard to do. This is not easy. I'm not saying this because it's easy. I'm just saying that this is how you protect yourself from this resentment of, like, I found that woman attractive. I went to talk to her. She dismissed me or rejected me. And this is something that all men can sort of, advice that all men can take. She rejected you. She doesn't want to talk to you. That's 100% within her right. Just walk away. It doesn't matter why. Just, it's done. And it's hard to accept that because it can hurt. But especially if you feel there's a racial component to it. But standing and arguing or remembering and stewing in it is not going to change the racism that person might have. right? Or change racism in America. So all you can do is just keep trying. And as long as you just keep trying, it's going to work out. You're going to find somebody, and they're going to want you, and you're going to want them, and that's the kind of relationship that you want. You want that hard yes. You don't want to have to try to negotiate the maybes.
So speaking about racism, what has been your viewpoint of the Black Lives Matter and the police killing? Do you believe the police are targeting black people? Or
yes, I do.
Okay.
I think it's unmistakable. I don't think you can really argue that there's a racial system in America that targets black, brown, and yellow bodies for violence. I was talking to my wife, and like there are studies that show that there are studies that have looked at traffic stops for the same cops, so the same sort of police force in the same area during the day and at night, and analyzing sort of like the racial patterns, right? The race of the people. And at nighttime, the racism seems to go away. They can't tell who's in the car, so they stop everyone basically in the way that you would expect based on demographics and just the fact that, black people, Asian people, Hispanic people, white people, they don't speed any more or less based on race, right? So like that to me, just a study that basically says you turn the lights off and the racism sort of goes away, or you turn the lights on and suddenly there's racism, that sort of tells me that there's racism. At least when it comes to enforcement of laws, right? I mean, it's sort of cut and dry. And for me, with the Black Lives Matter stuff, the protests that have been happening around racial justice and sort of just criminal justice, it's obviously there's racial discrimination when it comes to policing, but it's highlighting that there's just a problem with policing in general in America. There's a problem with justice and how we perceive what justice is in America. And people like these bad actors or these bad faith actors on the right will trot out these stories of, well, this white dude was killed by the police in a similar manner as like George Floyd. They're like, well, no one cared about him. I'm like, well, maybe someone should have cared about him, right? Like that example doesn't sort of disprove any point. It makes my point for me. It's that no one seems to care. Like white people should care that the police go after white people too. Like that, you know what I mean? So yeah, so like I'm very much hoping that this is not just like, this continues and there's actually real change in our justice system.
How about it sounds like you're pretty liberal. So are you pretty a supportive of LGBTQ type people then as well?
Of course, okay. Yeah. I mean, people should be allowed to live the way they want to live. For me, I wouldn't say I'm liberal. I think I'm much more progressive than that. Okay. For me, a liberal is more of a liberal sounds like, Democratic Party stuff, and I'm very frustrated with them. But, with LGBTQ, like, yeah, people shouldn't be persecuted for just who they are. And I think that fits very neatly with all the racial, environment and the talk that we have about that. When everyone was talking about, we've had decades of fights about, gay marriage and all that stuff, and I've actually learned a lot more about that just because I've read more queer writers and everything. But just talking about gay marriage and should gay people be able to marry, I'm like, why not? There's no reason not to. Who does that hurt? It doesn't hurt anyone. Just let them get married. So what? And I never quite understood the backlash against that. I was, maybe from the religious angle, some people had some religious beliefs about it. So I can sort of understand if that was what you're coming from, but there are people who just didn't support it. I'm like, why? Who cares? But yeah, so I'm supportive of those communities as well. They deserve justice too.
So what religious background are you? Or
Do you have a religious background at all, or no? Did your family grow up?
I was not raised very religious.
Okay.
You know, my dad was Jewish. My mom, I think, was raised Catholic.
So did you celebrate Hanukkah or did you celebrate Christmas?
Both.
Oh, I
I guess-
do you get more presents?
No, I only got presents for Christmas.
Oh, that sucks.
Didn't get- I know, that would have been great.
Yeah.
And my birthday is like close to Christmas, so like, you know, I get screwed out.
Did your parents let you choose what religion you wanted to practice, or did they?
Yeah, they were like, choose whatever one or none of them. And I think my brother and I both were basically like none. Like we're just not we're not religious.
So you would say you're atheist?
Agnostic.
I would
maybe?
say I'm an atheist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you don't believe in
For a long time, I was like agnostic, but then I was like, Adam, get off the fence, choose a side. So yeah, I would say I'm an atheist.
What's the difference between agnostic and atheism? Is it they believe in a god?
An agnostic is just someone who doesn't know,
Okay.
I guess,
no.
or like hasn't made a decision. They're like sort of the wishy-washy ones. I just, you know, I'm willing to say that I just don't believe that there is a God.
A lot of Korean people I noticed are actually really Christian and Catholic. Is your wife Christian at all, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you guys kind of have a differing.
I won't speak for her,
Okay.
but she's more religious than I am.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you guys go to church at all, or no?
No.
No.
Okay. So back to the mental health discussion. Is there anything you want to say to adoptees that are struggling right now, but they lack the ability to be open about it? Is there anything that you could do to encourage them to, like, seek help or get the necessary resources that are needed for them?
That you might feel like you're alone, that you're the only person, and that no one is out there to help you, and that you're going to be a burden if you want to go out there to seek help. And I want to tell them that you're not alone, you're not a burden, and there are people who want to help you and are willing to help you and want to help you, and we're here to welcome you into that. And that I know it's hard, but we care, and you know, we're here to help you.
How many times have you actually been to Korea then, since the first time you went?
Only 3 times.
3 times, okay. How was your experience? Did you travel around Korea, any of them, or participate in any activities, or?
Yeah, the first time was for the IKAA gathering.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the IKAA?
Yeah, how did you?
I
How
think
was
it's
it?
a big gathering for all Korean adoptees, but could you explain?
It
more
is
for
from around
people.
the world.
Could you explain more what you guys did for people who aren't familiar with that?
Sure. Yeah, so IKAA is the International Korean Adoptee Association. I think that's what it stands for. And every 3 years, there's a main gathering in Seoul where hundreds, I think probably even close to 1,000 Korean adoptees from around the world, not just the U.S., but from Europe and Australia and United States and even from South America, gather in Seoul, and it's about 4 or 5 days of we have seminars and talks and lectures and just meetings where like the Korean adoptees will just get together and share their stories, and we party a lot.
Okay, I guess that's important, huh? That's important for
For other
Yeah,
people
so it's
to know.
not just boring lectures. Literally, people will come to be like, I'm not coming to like go to these lectures, man. I'm just here to drink.
Okay.
Come and like, and like it's a lot of fun. And like we have dinners and most of the time like the Korean government, they'll come and like they'll be represented and talk and everything. I think the year I went, like I forget who the president was, but like his wife recorded like a video message for us. So like the Korean government, acknowledges, and they know who we are, and that they want to acknowledge us. And I think they very much like to have Korean adoptees come back to Korea.
What was the cost of this trip? Do you remember?
It's not cheap.
Okay.
I think the conference itself is probably to register. Don't quote me on this, but I'm sure it's $1,000 or $2,000 or something like that.
Okay.
Maybe a few hundred. something like that. And then you do get discounts at like hotel rates and everything. Seoul's not the cheapest city, so you know, and the plane tickets. So it's not a cheap trip, but there are, you know, a lot of the Korean organizations will sponsor people or help people. Like the adoptee organizations will help people go, and you don't need to feel like you need to go to IKAA, right? Like a lot of the adoptee organizations have special homeland trips and other things. So there are a lot of different options if a Korean adoptee wants to go to Korea but doesn't feel comfortable going like by themselves because they don't know anyone else who knows Korean or something like that. So there are a lot of options for that. So like that was the first time I went back. The second time I actually moved back to live there. So like I lost my job and I was laid off in like 2009. You know, the whole financial crisis happened and I was working at a company that was in the financial industry and they were like, we're going to let people go. So I lost my job and I moved out to Chicago to be with my brother, and my brother and I just wasn't getting any job opportunities. Like I wasn't getting any interviews. And I was like, I'm not married. I don't have a girlfriend. I don't have any attachments here really. So I was like, I'm going to go to Korea and just like see what it's like. And so I lived there for about 7 months.
How was that experience of you living in Korea?
It was great, but I traveled to like some other cities, and I had a lot of fun. I mean, I was working, but it was different. And I think there is like a gender difference. I think the Korean male adoptees that go back do have a slightly different, or they have a different experience and in a lot of ways, like a more positive experience than a lot of the female adoptees.
Really? Okay.
But I had a lot of fun, man. It was, like Seoul is just like a dynamic city. Like the Korean people I met were friendly. But when you go out and hang out, like the Korean people are just people, man. Like I would go to clubs and bars, and people are nice, some are mean, whatever.
You found some dates there, maybe in Korea, because actually another
guy.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's good. That's good.
Can I ask you how come you came back if you had such a good experience?
I just knew that I wasn't going to live there forever.
Oh, okay.
Like I hadn't really made any attempts really to like learn the language, which I know makes me a bad expat. But I just knew that eventually, like, I missed my family. Like I was going to come back. I was going to come back and I was going to live my life in America. But I wanted to go and like see what it was like and see what happened. I'm happy I did. I'm really happy I did.
So it sounds like someone can still live in Korea fairly comfortably, even if they don't speak the Korean language. Or did you have to speak a lot of Korean there, or?
Some organizations in Seoul that concentrate on helping adoptees to live there for cheaper, and they have these like apartments that they're not like the most fancy living, but it's like a dorm life. You're not living on your own and like it's like a bachelor pad or anything, but it was cheap enough that I made enough money to be able to live there and still have fun and everything. So it was doable. But if I had wanted to stay for longer, I definitely would have had to learn the language, and from that you could probably find a more regular job other than unless you really know the language, you're not going to be able to just live the way you think you do.
So did the Koreans in general actually treated the adoptees who didn't speak Korean fairly well? It sounds like from your experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I know people go there and I was able to find work. Like I went there and I didn't have any plan for anything. I didn't know anybody. Like, but there was someone that the organization. GoAL is another organization that helps adoptees sort of live and acclimate to Korea. And they had an office where like they were like, oh, we know somebody, and like they had a position open, or like maybe you can, interview. And this guy was looking, I think, to whatever, like hire someone like me, and I was able to get that job, and yeah, so I don't luck, fortune, or whatever, but I was able to get a job that I didn't really need to know Korean, and it was, I was fortunate enough to do that. Koreans don't like, we look Korean. You know what I mean? I think it's also very obvious that we're not Korean, like we weren't born in Korea, or we were born in Korea but we weren't raised there. So like, it's not like I could pose as like a native Korean, but they're very, I don't know, I like Korean people. The Korean people are really, they want you to be there. Like they weren't, I never felt like I was being pushed away from Korea because I was an adoptee.
Is there any last words you'd like to talk about, to mention GiDE or anything about your mental health or anything in general we talked about that we maybe missed? Some advice or two, maybe?
We covered a lot, and I really appreciate you guys asking me to do this. So yeah, I want to thank you guys just having me on here. It's really important, the work we're doing, and even if we just help one person, I feel like it was worth it.
There's actually one more question. So before GiDE, when did you actually get involved with GiDE? Actually,
fairly early on. I mean, not that GiDE's very old.
Yeah.
I think GiDE's only the foundation's like a few months old. Yeah. I met Derek like a couple of years ago.
Oh, really? Okay.
So we've known each other for a little bit, and I think I actually I just saw something about it on Facebook, or somehow I saw something about it, and then I was like, oh, Derek's doing it, and then I called, I messaged him or texted him or something, because we had been talking on and off about like maybe doing a podcast or just like doing something together, and then I saw he had started GiDE, and I was like, I'd love to volunteer in whatever way I can, and that was it. And then we talked and what can we do, and initially we were like, oh yeah, Twitter and things, so like let's do some social media. And then I was just like, duh, Adam, podcast. So I was like, let's just do a podcast, and that.
I think it's great. This has been like your first time. You don't play video games or something, or you ever do like Let's Plays and like record yourself playing games at all? Or
I've thought about doing something like that, but I'm so bad at games. It would just be like all my people like laughing at me. They're like, get good.
what are your hobbies right now? What do you do aside from the GiDE stuff?
Well, I have the online magazine with my friends, so we do that.
What kind of magazine is it?
Video games. Like that's my main hobby, video games. I love. I'm really excited for the PlayStation 5 coming out soon. This year. Were you aware of the Korean culture is big on video games? Did you see that on you? Oh yeah. We were. Yeah. So my brother was really into StarCraft. So my brother's the one that actually good at games. I suck. Like, he took all the good genes. He took all the talent for video games. So he was so good at StarCraft that he was 7th in the world.
Really? Holy cow!
Did he win?
Good.
Did he win money for it or no?
Yeah. So like this was back in the day. I sometimes think my brother was born like 10 years too early, because he would have been like a millionaire by now, like just playing video games if he were like born in this era. But he to this day, like he will play competitive Overwatch and just like he's very, very good at video games. But he's generally smarter and everything than me anyway. So, but yeah, so like we were always on the computer. So I'd play like Civilization, like World of Warcraft, Diablo. But like Diablo is my main franchise. Like I love Diablo. But yeah, I'm into it, man. I know all about it.
Everyone's really sensitive, and I guess I wanted to ask another question. What's your viewpoint on adoption?
I would say that I'm very critical of the current system. So I'm not against adoption as like a concept, right? In some small cases, in a small number of cases, it's the only option.
Do you believe what some people adoptees say is that it's child trafficking? Do you believe that it's that intense, or?
In some circumstances, it can be, yes. I think in some circumstances it becomes that. There was a case there was a case just recently. I forget which state it is in the States, but a government official, or I think it was a lawyer, who was set up to do private adoptions from a South American country, was convicted of basically trafficking. So in some extreme circumstances, it can be trafficking. And I think in a certain way, it is basically a legalized structure of moving people, right? You're moving people from one area to another, from one family to another. I'm not as extreme as saying the whole system is that way, or that it's set up to be that way on purpose. But there are certain situations where, like, if you talk about adoptees without citizenship, if you're moving children from one place to another and you don't do it properly, it ends up being, if you look at the definition of these things, that it was a sort of a trafficking situation.
So I guess that brings me to another question then. Were you naturalized properly? Because there's some adoptees that
ended up being deported.
I was fortunate enough that my dad was a lawyer, and he was very, very diligent in seeking out all of these things and doing it. So I'm lucky that my parents were, wanted to do it and had the means to do it. And my adoptive father was a lawyer himself, so like personally had the skills and knowledge to do it, or to seek the right kind of avenues to do it. But yeah, I mean, I think very easily could have been in a situation where a lot of, thousands of Korean adoptees are in today without citizenship. That could have been me.
I guess there's another thing that popped in my mind. Was it incredibly painful trying to let go of your adoptive dad that passed away? Because I feel like a lot of adoptees kind of have a hard time, at least some maybe have a hard time letting go of certain things, or it kind of relates to their a loss or abandonment.
Some
or
basically really don't like their adoptive family. So I'm just curious. He was just curious if you were really close to him and experienced a sense of loss as though he was your real dad.
Like a really extreme.
Yeah, like I consider my adoptive parents to be my real parents. Yep. I don't think it's a question of having only one set of real parents, right? Like it might sound weird, but I kind of feel like I have, 4 real parents. Mm-hmm. One set of real parents that I was able to live with and be raised by, and 2 that unfortunately I wasn't. And I've talked about this before. I've tweeted, or I've plotted about how, like, Father's Day is very means a lot to me, because I've had 2 parents. I've had 2 fathers. One that I could learn. I learned how to be a man from, and one that I wasn't able to meet, or that I don't really know that well. But I feel the loss of both of them. Because my birth father, he passed away when I was young. I think after I was adopted, but he passed away. So there's not even a chance for me to get to know who he is.
Could that be the reason why you have step family? Because she didn't remarry, but she chose to marry someone else, and then could that be the
question? Or?
I don't know. I mean, but she ended up, she remarried, or she had children with someone else. She had another relationship. That's totally fine. I mean, that happens.
You guys actually talked 3 times. You said, like, back and forth. Did you find a sense of closure, even just? I know you haven't seen her in person, but you.
No, I wouldn't say there's closure.
Oh.
No, I mean, we didn't really talk about it. It was just sort of like, yeah, I'm doing okay, and I'm doing okay.
Okay.
I sent her some details of my life at that point. I was just a senior, or I was a junior in high school, so I'm doing all right, Mom. You know, I'm doing well in school. I'm going to college, all that sort of thing. But there's so much has happened since then that, there's no closure in my mind. I still wonder a lot.
I know there's a lot of adoptees who feel the same way. Can you offer like some solutions or what other things that you have been trying to, I guess, cope with that kind of
knowing that there's no closure with your birth
yeah,
family.
what have you been
Identity.
doing with your own life, try to find that fulfillment?
Yeah, that's a tough question. Like, you know, I don't have any answers. It's not like, yeah, it's not. I can give my thoughts and my advice as in like what I try to do for myself, but I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I can answer these questions. Like that, it's something that like everyone has to sort of come to on their own, and that might seem like a cop out, but I'm not gonna say that I have an answer because I don't, and I think it would be irresponsible for me to say, yeah, of course, I'll tell you exactly what to do. If anyone tells you that when it comes to stuff like this, that they're full of all right, they're just for me, I try not to like wallow in guilt.
Okay.
I try to feel it and then have it spur me into action to change it or to do something out of it. I think that guilt is it can be a useless feeling if you just feel it and then feel sorry for yourself and do nothing. So when it comes to sort of this feeling of not having closure, we talked about this earlier about how like I haven't really done a birth search.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to promise to myself that I'm going to do that, and that I'm going to search for the closure, or at least try to acknowledge that maybe closure will never happen. Maybe I will find my birth mother and we'll meet, and it's possibly maybe closure won't even come from that. A lot of times, from the friends that I've had that have met their birth family, like that just opens another journey. That there's another long journey, after sort of reunion. And reunion isn't the end; it's like the beginning of another sort of, more questions and things like that. So I try not to set myself to expect closure. So
I met a few adoptees that kind of do I wouldn't say the wrong route, but they just don't know any better. Some resorted to drugs, addictions, crime, and other unfortunate behaviors. Have you ever found yourself going that way, or because the way with your family, do you feel like you didn't feel like you had to go that route?
I mean, when I was in I think I probably drank too much, to be perfectly honest. I've done drugs before, but I've not been addicted.
Okay.
Right? Like I've not been like an habitual user. But I'm not a saint.
No one knows.
I think probably for me, I drink too much. I'll admit that. That's probably.
You do know Koreans drink a lot in Korea. I heard that Koreans drink a lot in Korea. Is that true?
Yeah, every time
I can make an excuse and say we're Korean. I wouldn't say like I wouldn't go to the point to say it's a problem, but I would say that I probably drink more. I drink more than is healthy. Let's say that. So yeah, no one's immune to this. Like everyone has their ways of coping. Some people might, eat too much. Some people might gamble. Some people might, whatever it is. Everyone has a way of coping with stuff. So, and again, I try not to beat myself up about it too much and just try to do better. So.
Well, I really appreciate your story. I think it offers a different perspective. One, you generally had a fairly good family. I mean, you did have issues with mental health, but it even proves that someone that actually grew up with a pretty decent parents, like my brother and I as well. There's still sometimes issues, but it's still being worked on, and I'm hoping maybe with GiDE and connecting with a lot of people, maybe we can actually find more answers. That's kind of why I enjoy these chats, because the more that we keep on talking about it, the more we'd find what the problem is and maybe find some solutions, and I think it's just going to go up from here.
Exactly. You know, we can find answers together, and those answers are going to be different for everybody, and sometimes just the community is the answer, right? Sometimes just being together and having talks, and, you know, just, you know, even having just like happy hours or people singing and, you know, being goofy on video, or, you know, sharing, you know, an interest in video games and like playing games together or something. That can be sometimes that's the answer. It's just community, you know, people connecting and having fun, sharing in like our grief and hard times too. You know?
Before meeting GiDE, have you actually have you ever had Korean adoptees around you, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I do. I volunteer for IKAA in New York.
Okay.
So they have a mentoring program, a mentorship program. So I've been a mentor for them for a few years. Unfortunately, with COVID, it was just cut short. So like our past year was just cut in half. That reminds me, I need to contact the head of that and just talk to her about like what we want to do next year.
Okay.
But because should be starting up again, because you know it goes like 6 or 7, you know, 7 or 8 months out of the year. But yeah, so like adoption and adoptees and just having, you know, working in that space, I think is going to be part of my life forever. You know, this is one of my many communities, but it's a very important one.
You ever thought about being a radio host?
You know, I would love it.
Yeah.
I think I would actually kind of love doing that. I have no idea how to get into it. Like, I think for me, being a podcaster is probably that sort of thing. But if I could be paid to be on radio and talk to people and play music and just talk, that'd be amazing. But who knows?
Alrighty, Adam. We really appreciate this talk. I think we discussed a little bit about the adoption, our birth families, and the little bit of complex feelings that a lot of adoptees face. And I really appreciate this talk.
Oh, thank you guys.
Are you in any of the old school Final Fantasy games or new school or
not really your type?
Yeah, so like I like Final Fantasy, but I don't think I ever really finished.
Because they're long games.
Yeah, they're long, and like so like I don't think I've ever finished any of them. I like Final Fantasy IX.
That's my favorite.
Yeah.
Everyone loves 7, man. Did you play 7 yet? Did you play FF7, the update? Yeah.
No, I don't have a PlayStation. So.
Oh, so you don't have any more PlayStation. So maybe they might release the second one on PS5 anyway, 'cause that seems like what they're
Probably, yeah.
It's like they're running out of ideas.
Final Fantasy IX is good. I like it, man. Like,
that's why you and I would be buddies, because some people have a love for FF7. I don't. It's okay.
You know, I don't think I ever had the PlayStation 1.
Oh, really?
Oh, really? Okay.